Hola, it's Rachel from Wait Que, your Spanglish podcast de confianza. When we started this podcast, I had no idea how much work went into it. Recording, editing, designing logos, managing socials. Each day brought a new challenge. Starting something from scratch is exciting, pero it can also be very overwhelming. That's why I wish I had something like Shopify back then. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and it's also perfect for anyone getting started. Build your online store with Shopify's professional templates, and let their AI tools help write descriptions, polish photos, and generate headlines. Shopify's got your back with inventory, shipping, returns, and all the not-so-glamorous parts of running a business. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your site. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/sonoro. Go to shopify.com/sonoro for more information.
On this episode of Tamarindo, we talk to Fabi, la reina of Reyna Tropical, about queer joy, creative freedom, and the tropical sounds that carry messages of resistance, healing, and liberation.
Welcome to Tamarindo Podcast, hosted by me, Brenda Gonzalez, a fitness coach, political nerd, and nonprofit capacity builder.
And me, Delcy Sandoval, a Guatemalan-American licensed therapist and passionate creativity advocate. Together, we're here to uplift our community through powerful conversations with changemakers, creatives, and healers.
Each week on the pod, we talk politics, culture, and personal development. Listeners call Tamarindo the Advocacy and Self-Love Podcast. Vámonos! Let's start the show.
Hello, Tamarindo listeners. Hey, Brenda. ¿Cómo estás?
I am, oh my gosh, just got to say exhausted. This has been a crazy week. You know, those short weeks actually end up feeling like overwhelming. It was last Monday was a holiday, but a couple reasons why I'm very exhausted is we're recording here on a Friday. As listeners know, I teach a workout class on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 a.m., but I also substituted for one of my colleagues. And so she teaches 3 classes back to back. So that means on Tuesdays and Thursdays of this week, Tuesday and Thursday of this week, I taught 4 classes. I was so dead. I needed to take a nap. Like literally, as soon as I came home, I was like, I got to take a nap. So physically exhausted and then work. But anyways, that's been my week. Pero ¿cómo estás? How are you?
I feel the same way, like completely thrown off my routine, but also I think what happens to me is that I get into the vibe of like I had so much fun during the weekend that it's hard for me to get into the groove of wanting to be serious and do my work during the week. And I'm sort of like fighting with myself about it. And so even yesterday, instead of doing some to-dos that I really had to do, I just like took myself to the park. I got myself a picnic. I was alone. I listened to music. I just was like, I need to extend this joy.
Love it. I love it.
We have so much to talk about today, and it's such an exciting episode. For people who don't know, this is the episode where we interview Fabi, la reina of Reyna Tropical. If you don't know what Reyna Tropical is, it is a total vibe. It is an entire music revolution. Brenda and I had the pleasure last year of going to the Malegria tour. It was so much fun. And Fabi is so cool to talk to. And we talk about queer joy today. So there's a lot to discuss. But before we get into it, Brenda, let's catch up a little bit. What have you been up to?
Well, I mean, speaking of music, I went out last night to good music, and I actually, as I'm looking at this top, I'm pretty sure I wore this top when we went to go see Reyna Tropical, and it was a really great experience because she puts on such a God, there's such a vibe, right? You end up feeling like sexually empowered, like you're dancing, vibing. And it was also very electric because the concert when we saw her was at Hollywood Forever, right? The cemetery at the lodge that they have there. So even just seeing a concert there is always so much fun. So I'm feeling just like very into music. So appropriate that we're having a musical guest today, because you'll hear later when we get to our basuras that it's a music-filled month, summer for me. But yeah, how are you?
Yeah, you know what? Music has also been on my mind. I know that we talked last week, kind of revealed that I'm expecting a baby. And one of the things that's been interesting is me thinking about how when a baby comes into the world, they've missed out on like 100 years of music, right?
They have so much to catch up on.
There's so much music to catch up on. And I don't want to do like a baby bop or something. I want to like catch them up on all. And so what I did is I created this playlist. It's called like Music to Grow Up By, or to grow up to. And I've been trying to add all the songs that a human being should know. Right. And so it has been such a fun exercise to think through every genre, every decade. What are the top songs that you should know if you are a human on planet Earth right now? And it's really great to go down memory lane. So I've been sort of in that musical space, you know. It's been really fun.
I love that. That's such a cool prompt. I can't wait to see what the final product is. And that'd be cool for listeners if you're thinking about it. I'm curious what you would add on your playlist for catching someone up. Like, hey, welcome to the world. Here's all the songs you need to know. I love that as a challenge. That sounds super cool. You're going to have to share that playlist with us.
Yes. I've had lots of people contribute to it. So Brenda, we need your top we need your top songs.
I love it. Okay, I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of reminds me a little bit of the topic today, because what we're talking about is joy. We're talking about healing, creative freedom. You know, the world has been a very heavy place lately, and thinking about how we stay grounded, how we stay joyful, I think is something important to talk about. And I'd like to start kind of by talking to you, Brenda, like about your own creative freedom, where you stand. Let's have a conversation about that.
Okay, but can I ask you first? Because I don't want to go first. Okay, so I want to ask you, Delcy. Here's the question for you as we consider this prompt and these topics. I want to know, when do you feel the most free to be yourself, and what helps to unlock that freedom feeling?
I have to say, you know, and this is something I have to work on, right? And please know, everybody, that I've got my therapist and we're working on it. But this is something that my goal is to have this be more intrinsic and have it just come from me. But the reality is, right now where I'm at in life, I need to be inspired by others. And so when I am in alternative spaces, subcultural spaces, queer spaces, musical spaces, you know, places where people really kind of come to show out and to be themselves and be comfortable, it makes me comfortable. If I see somebody totally wearing whatever they want, behaving how they feel comfortable behaving, coming out as their biggest self, you know, it helps me to unlock that within me and push myself a little bit more to feel comfortable and be that way. I have one friend in particular, shout out to my friend Guru Shabid, who just lights up a room when she shows up, from her fashion to her behavior, because she just is so herself. And it makes me want to be that way and pushes me into that space. So I think that's when I feel most free, in those kinds of alternative creative spaces.
Yeah. Is there an example? Like, what are some of these spaces when you say like subgenre? Because that speaks to me. And like describe some of the places that are cultivating that sort of freedom.
Yeah, like if I see, for example, let's say there's like a cumbia goth night, right? And
That
you
is so specific. Yes.
It's very specific. And you get there and people are wearing, their botas and their hat but it's all goth and they've got their own vibe. And I show up and I just think, oh my God, it's like, Mexico City meets LA in the 90s, like just so cool. And it makes you want to show up and think about the version of yourself that loves cumbia, that loves, shoegaze music and be there with everybody just being free and fun and dancing by yourself,
Very cool.
Yeah.
That
and
sounds like I'm picturing the event. I need to go. Sounds so awesome.
We need to go. It's so awesome. And I'm curious for you because you're so involved in the music scene. You spend a lot of time going to these events. That's one thing that I really admire about you is that you like build it into your life. What's a song, a place, or a ritual that kind of like uplifts you immediately?
Well, I was going to say the act of going out to a show, going out to a concert and going out dancing is something that instantly lifts my spirits. And we're lucky to live in Los Angeles because there's so many opportunities to do that. And there's so many opportunities to tap into subcultures. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm thinking about last night specifically. I know I've mentioned it many times on this podcast, but there is a very niche genre of music called drum and bass. And anytime you find a drum and bass club in any community, you're going to find like-minded people usually. Usually and it's such a acquired taste of music that I think that's why it's so niche, and at least in the US. I mean, it's huge in the UK, for instance, but in the US, it still feels very, very small. And so you're going to run into people. And last night we went out, there's this club called Respect that's been around for literally 25 years, 26 years, this weekly night of drum and bass. And it was one of those shows where the particular DJ doesn't come out to this side often. So you'll see a lot of the people that have been going to this venue or this night for many, many years all showed out. So we ran into so many different friends. But I ran into someone and exactly what you described, like somebody that is so in their element. Okay, I noticed her because what she was wearing. She was wearing these really, really dark sunglasses, this puffer jacket that was all black, big cargo boots, and she just had a presence, right? And then she goes up to me and then she removes her glasses. She's like, hey, I'm Patty. You knew me as a baby. And I did know her as a baby. Her parents and my parents are friends. And it's so funny. So like, that's like such a perfect example of like a space where people could be in the clothes that is so aligned with that music, and maybe in their I guess what I'm thinking of is like maybe a mask, but an empowering mask, almost it's an unmasking. Their outfit is actually what's underneath the mask of our everyday lives. And then she took off her glasses and connected with me. And I just thought that was such a example of what coming together because there's a certain type of music that you are really into can unlock is those moments. So.
Totally. And it's so interesting to think for me, when I was a teenager, dressing the way that I felt inside was a no-brainer. I wanted everybody to know what I was thinking, what kind of music I liked, who I was, right? I thought it was a really great way to exist in the world. But as I got older and I started to lose like some trust in the world, I started to get more nervous about people being able to read who I was really quickly just by looking at me. And I started kind of conforming more to like appropriate attire and what people thought was appropriate. And so for me, when I get to kind of wear what I want to wear, it is a big deal. And it feels like I'm allowing the world in again. And kind of, it is like an unmasking. So like, I think that's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah. And as you're describing that, I'm thinking of another recent memory because I don't think I take very many risks in my fashion attire. I do love that about you. You've mentioned this many times before that you do take thought in what you put together as an outfit to be, and it changes. It's like expressive. It's very, very, very much a mood thing. I think I have very basic pieces of clothing, but not too long ago, I went out dancing with some friends. And again, what that unlocks, it was a very disco themed environment, and it was one of those random nights that we've had in LA lately. We've had crazy like super cold spells and then super hot spells. So this was one of those super cold spells where you weren't expecting it to be cold, and it literally rained a little bit. Anyways, we walk into the venue and they were selling these multicolored coats, and I spent the money and I got this rainbow colored leopard print, think Lisa Frank fur coat, and I felt glorious in it. So I'm just waiting for another cold day so I could wear it. And yeah, sometimes fashion and music and the intersection of the two could be very empowering. So
totally. We need to wait for that like disco night that rotates every now and then, because it's so much fun for you to wear that coat of many colors.
Yeah. And then, this is speaking of our guest, which I know you're introducing in a minute. I mean, I think she really embodies that. She's got this cowboy look, but literally cowboy look. Mm-hmm. And it's so masculine, but it's so, she looks so empowered by that look, by the big belt, las botas, the hat, and the guitar. Yes. The guitar becomes part of her. She is this electric guitar. So I think she really embodies this that we're talking about.
100%. And the sex appeal that she brings to the table kind of makes you want to tap into your sexuality. You mentioned that earlier. I really felt that way. I was like, wait a second, like I want to be sexy too. Mm-hmm. This conversation with her was really great. Let's talk about it. So we're going to hear from Fabi in a couple of minutes. This conversation was really beautiful, a really grounding one. We tap into a lot of conversations surrounding queer joy and thriving and kind of using music to heal and resist at the same time. She was so fun to talk to. She made a lot of really strong points, and I was really surprised by a lot of the things that she said. Like, one thing that stood out to me was that she mentioned that she grew up in kind of a silent home, that music was not a part of her upbringing, and there wasn't a lot of sound going on. And so she had to sort of like tap into the sounds of the city and the neighborhood and the cars passing by to sort of understand that part of herself. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And she also talked a little bit about how she knows when she's not thriving. And that stuck out to me a lot. So I'm excited for you guys to hear it. Here we go. Fabi from Reyna Tropical. All right. It is such a pleasure to have you here on Tamarindo. Fabi from Reyna Tropical. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure. I've been lucky enough to be at one of your shows, and I have to tell you that after that show, I felt just on this almost like high from excitement for at least 3 weeks. And I told anybody who would listen about it. So I feel like the audience is getting quite a treat today having you on. So let's start with a little bit of a grounding into this moment right now. How are you feeling? How are you feeling with everything that's going on? How you doing today?
I mean, every day is different. Yesterday I felt so full of creativity and was just making music till 1 or 2 a.m. And today I woke up feeling a lot heavier in my spirit and moving slower and, noticing that I want to, I want to be mad at myself for that. But instead I went and got some plants and I just spent the day in the garden. I have work to do, but I know that if I take the time to rest, then tomorrow I will have more energy for the things I need to get done. So
I love that. I love that start because it really feeds into what we're talking about today, which is kind of noticing when you're in a place of struggle and trying to move into a place of thriving. I'd like to talk to you about that. Let's talk a little bit about this idea of joy, of expression of queer joy, of BIPOC joy. How would you define that?
I mean, the best joy that one could have on this earth is gay, for sure. That's my personal opinion. So I'll start with that. And, um, I thank Creator every day for being queer, because I feel like I just can understand such a vast range of love because of my queerness, I think. And um, so that's where I'll start. I kind of already forgot your question thinking about being queer. And
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, do any memories come to mind? But I don't know if we want to go that way. When you think about the word thriving, when you think about yourself thriving in that state, in the love that you're talking about, what comes to mind?
yeah, I mean, I just feel like my practice right now, and this is something that I think I used to hold back from, is I'm really appreciating and accepting and acknowledging that I fall in love every day, all the time, to so many people and so many places and so many things, and just acknowledging kind of the earth and the water and the flowers and the plantitas, and as living beings is like just so life filling in and of itself. And so um that's really a big practice right now that I'm in, is how do I, in my own acceptance, move through the world that we live in right now, that is constantly trying to have us identify ourselves through our traumas instead of our joys, and trying to define us through how productive we are, and trying to kind of align our skills towards like what we make money with. And for me, joy and queer love and everything is really kind of just mentally shifting that mentality into a more feeling based philosophy of like, when I feel with my joy, I move and I produce like just things, feelings, creativity, spaces, community that is more for the whole instead of for the individual. So, I mean, it's a practice. Queer love and joy in and of itself is not just pleasure, and that's important too. And I think that's where it starts, and that's why I'm so about self-pleasure, and I'm so about connecting with my erotic self, because I think it's that feeling that and accepting that and releasing that shame and the guilt is kind of what has propelled me, at least, into the curiosity of what does it mean to share this joy and share this feeling of sensuality and feeling of caring and feeling of giving with the whole, with the community, with the earth. Yeah.
I feel like you really embody that. I have to say, I was there for the Malegria tour, as I mentioned earlier. And one thing that really struck me about that was that there seemed to be so much pain in your life at that time. And it wasn't like you were shying away from the challenges, the struggles. They were on display, but they were also there as a way to kind of deepen the presentation of celebration. Mm-hmm. And it was so clear in that time. I'm curious for you, how has your art kind of helped you deepen that sense of self so that you can put it out there for people to connect to?
Yeah. Well, I think that, I talked about this a lot. Like, I was raised on the border, and I come from, a lineage of women that were, either raped or sexually abused, or have stories. A lot of their identity, and the stories that I'm told even, is around like their traumas and their pain and the violence against them. And so I just was born with inherited rage and inherited anger and inherited pain and trauma around my sexuality. And because of that has been the primary energy of my life, is grief, and what I've witnessed too. So I think from an early age, I have always tried to find the outlet for that. I've always tried, and my mom too, shout out to single moms and like really wanting for those cycles to break, because my mom also just really put me in different places where I could try and find my outlet for that anger. And then I found music, and I think music and art is such a profound way of channeling that anger and recycling that anger and creating something else from this really potent, profound energy that like I have learned so much about, and I mean, I've really been able to just understand love so in such a crazy, wide-reaching way because of my understanding of pain. And so, yeah, when I play live, I think that we all hold so much grief, and especially those of us, that are mixed race and from the diaspora and that are not accepted here and are not good enough for there. And just like, we hold a lot of pain. And instead of like burying it and just trying to ignore it and avoid it, like show it. And then that way you know what you're working with, like let people witness you in that vulnerability, let people witness you in that grief so that you can move it and people can help you move it too. Because I didn't do all that by myself, that's for sure, like, in fact, I don't ever want to do anything by myself ever again. Like, I'm like, I don't want to feel grief or love by myself. I'm trying to do that being watched by as many people as possible, because that's how big that grief is. It needs community to be moved.
You said that it didn't happen, alone, but I also imagine that it didn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah.
When was that moment, or what was that journey like when you kind of realized, like, I can expand beyond survival and sort of into including celebration into my life?
That's a good question. I mean, because I just feel like I've always been experimenting with that, like since as far as I can remember. And that's why I always want to shout out like my inherited sort of indigenous like bloodline, because I think that is something that's some of the wisdom that I just carry, like to figure out, to know how to shift that, because that's part of existing on this earth. Like, we just cannot get to joy without going through pain. That just doesn't exist, but we have to know the ceremony, and we have to know the ceremony around how to do that, how to treat it, how to approach it. And a lot of us have forgotten that. A lot of us have forgotten what that ceremony sounds like, looks like, feels like, dances like. And for me, music has helped me remember, but I can remember making that, like, kind of recycling that energy for, since I was little, like for some of my first memories. And luckily, my mom and those, who supported her got me out of situations and into situations where I could start to trust my intuition. And I could start to say, okay, I believe myself, I believe this feeling that I have, and I believe in myself so much that I'm going to go and create spaces to make other people feel that, and that's where kind of being in bands and singing and going to shows and playing them. And also I have a lot of other things I've done in the music industry to create spaces for people to feel. The Reyna Tropical is just my latest project.
Yeah, Yeah, Reina Tropical feels a lot like it's really rooted in this like identity of almost like resistance and celebratory resistance. I wonder for you, when you're really thriving in that space and you've got a crowd in front of you, what is that transfer of energy like when you see a crowd come in and they're a little bit, they don't know what to expect, and by the end you're sort of infusing them with this excitement and power that you've figured out for yourself.
Being on stage is very interesting for me because I think the times in between being on stage, I'm trying to figure out who I am, and then when I'm on stage, I feel like I've always known, and we're just hanging out, like getting like empowering each other, like I feel just so comfortable on stage, and I feel the most myself, and I'm just so authentically me, so much so that I'm almost like, oh, I just learned a few things about me, and and I think that's probably what gets people so interested in the live performance, just to witness someone, yeah, just authentically being themselves, is really refreshing these days. And watching people kind of watching people kind of wake up to themselves in front of me is probably one of the most just like invigorating things, like I can see that person is like changing their life right now, and that has happened to me watching bands and artists too, I mean, growing up, that's why I am who I am. My life has changed over and over being at a show. So I think it's one of the greatest feelings in the world. And that's why I feel like music and going to see music and supporting music is almost like you're supporting energy workers. You're supporting, it's like going to therapy. It's like getting a massage for your spirit, because your spirit, needs to not just listen to music, but feel the vibration of that around community.
Yeah, I'd love to go that direction. Tell me a bit more about that. When you're growing up and you're kind of coming into your own, who were some of those influences that made you sort of understand the power that music can have for celebration?
Well, this is kind of ironic, but I didn't grow up with that much community, and with that many like music, or with that much music. So I didn't grow up with that much community, and I didn't grow up with that much music because my mom was a single mom, and like all my grandparents had passed, and todo el pinche trauma y todo de la frontera, so. And my mom was like a very highly independent woman, not married or anything. So she was kind of exiled from a lot of different cultural things. And so then I was too. And as an only child, I just sat in a lot of silence, and I learned, I don't know how to translate the world in that silence. I actually have more memories of like having conversations with myself or who I thought God was, than I do like listening to music. And so I think my biggest influences growing up was just like the sounds of the street, the sounds of the bus, being in so much movement. My mom and I traveled through Mexico back and forth, like for 24-hour bus rides often, and so I can kind of fall asleep on the bus faster than I can in my quiet room. So those are my musically and community wise, that's kind of my biggest influences, right? Is like really being able to listen to silence and making making sounds into music.
I love the idea of somebody as musical as you being so focused in on this beautiful, profound silence, right? And the things that you can tap into when you're in that silence. I wonder for you if that maybe makes it clearer when you know that you're slipping into maybe a place that's not feeling like thriving. How do you identify when you're kind of slipping back into survival mode, and how do you get yourself in a position to thrive?
Well, I've been in survival mode most of my life, and I think actually only recently I've gotten out of it. With Reyna Tropical has helped me remember a lot, and I just think music is such nourishment for the soul, and I'm just like eternally so grateful for the opportunity to learn through music. But when I know I'm slipping out of thriving is when I like become addicted to things, or become obsessed, or become a workaholic, or I can only find calming for my nervous system through like drinking, or basically never wanting to be alone. When my body and my mind pushes me away from sitting in silence is when I know that I'm slipping out of my joy.
Oh, you're speaking to me. I feel like I
feel like you want to say something.
I felt very seen there. I think people listening can really connect to that. Are there any particular, you mentioned some rituals earlier. Are there any particular rituals, daily, small ones, anything that you do to kind of return yourself to center, for folks that are listening, like what does Fabi do? What can we do?
Well, every day I have to fight with myself to center myself. Every single day I am battling my mind telling me that I want to drink, or that I want to get on Instagram for 6 hours, or that I want to work all day, or that I want to just sit and, focus on anything but me. And I have a really hard time with this. And often when I want to sit down and write, like I have an idea, or I feel like I'm like, oh, I want to write. And like, I don't, my mind tells me, no, don't, go do something else. That can happen over and over and over again, until one day I'm just like, I'm just going to do this for 2 minutes. Like, I'm going to turn on my guitar and I'm going to play it for 2 minutes. And if I stay here after more than 2 minutes, then I'm going to stay here. And usually once I pick up my guitar and I start doing something, I'm there for literally 5 hours, or however long. And actually, like just the other day, that happened to me, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I wrote like a whole new song in like an hour, and it's just once you give yourself those 5 minutes, it starts pouring out, because you have probably, I'm talking like really about myself, but one has probably sort of avoided it or pushed it away so many times that by the time you give yourself that moment, it comes rushing out. And that's not only for creativity, that's also for, your traumas and your pains and all the things too, right? Like once you stop working, you give yourself just a few days to like sit with your thoughts and your body, it's gonna come forth. And I suggest having like outlets, like for me, it would be like a piece of paper, writing, my guitar, and that's really for me all I need, but now I have therapy and body work, but I would suggest those things, have something for your mind, have something for your body, and then like a good little like snack plate.
As we're wrapping up here, I'd love to know, let's talk about community. What is it that you wish that people understood about the realities, the beautiful things that have to do with the queer, Indigenous, BIPOC experience? What would you like them to know about joy?
I mean, I feel like, people know, like I feel like that's not something I have to tell them. Like everyone knows their joy. Everyone can access their joy. They just have to allow themselves to. They have to believe that they not only deserve it, like it's essential to life, you know? I think a lot of us are like, I don't deserve that, or I didn't work hard enough for it, or whatever excuse that we can't feel, or they have it worse than me, so I don't get to be happy in my joy or in my comfort. And, you know, no, I mean, because we have this, like, we have to use it and share it with other people. You know, we have to use the privileges that we have, not just so that we are nourished and to keep it to ourselves, but so that we can, you know, share it with so many others in so many other spaces. And just by you, like, being joyful, you can go out in the street and talk to someone and like change their whole life, you know, just as an example of being happy. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think we just have to allow ourselves. And honestly, I personally feel like BIPOC and Indigenous and queer folks are the ones that need to learn that the least, because we are the ones who have the most of it in our inherited wisdom, you know, and so you just gotta unlock that.
For folks that have never been around, they've never heard of Reyna Tropical, I don't know where you've been, right? And they want to come, and what can they expect? What do you hope that they get from coming to one of your shows?
I mean, best case scenario, you fall in love, and whether that's with yourself or with someone else, that's always my hope. But I honestly, I just feel like if you come to a Reyna Tropical show, be open to feeling something, or be open to things, to people, to newness. And I think that's my biggest request, you know, and whatever happens after that is positive.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Fabi. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, and we're back. It was so cool listening to Fabi. We hope you enjoy it, and we will see you at the next Reyna Tropical show. Let's jump into our rapid fire questions. Brenda, what is your matraca for this week?
Okay, I came prepared. So my matraca for this week goes out to Federal Communications Commissioner Ana M. Gomez, who is on tour right now, participating in listening tours to take feedback from the community about the current state of the media and our First Amendment right to a free and independent press. Basically, the state of that is not good, right? It's under a lot of threat. I recently attended an event this week. It was at Cal State LA. It was hosted by the nonprofit The Free Press. Julio Ricardo Varela, friend of the pod, invited me. He works at The Free Press, plus he's got the Latino newsletter. So it was great to be there. And there was a lot of journalists in the room, and I really enjoyed the format. So it was a panel conversation. Then it was literally listening, where she had people voice their concerns, all very similar concerns. People are feeling the threat of censorship, the threat of newsrooms shrinking, the fact that people do not have access to local news in their communities, the fact that social media, with everybody behind a mic, including us, but you don't know what expertise we have. We don't have to adhere to any journalistic standards, and it's podcasts and influencers and social media that is filling that void because of these shrinking newsrooms. So there's a lot at stake. So the major takeaway is that we need to be vigilant about what's happening in newsrooms that are shrinking, in newsrooms that are afraid about censorship, and the threats that this poses to our democracy. So again, the matraca goes to her because she is taking it upon herself to sound the alarm. We'll link an article in the show notes that you can all reference. You can learn a little bit more about this, but I'm going to leave you all with a quote from one of the panelists of this event. It's from Gabriel Lerner, who's the editor emeritus of La Opinión. And his quote is, "Many think that America is so exceptional that you don't have to do anything because fascism will never happen here. I compare that with those who danced on the Titanic thinking it would never sink." So the Titanic is sinking and we need to watch out. And thank you to Commissioner Gomez for helping us see that.
I love that. Really, really important topic there. And I love that you brought us into context, Brenda, because that's is a whole world involved here in the new media landscape. All right. What's my matraca? What am I feeling? I hope that everybody on the show already knows how much I love sports. And I...
By the way, when are we going to go to... Okay, we need to go to a game. Okay.
We need to go to a
on
sports
our
game.
to-dos. Yes, please.
So much fun. We have new people on the team that we need to see. But this week... So the Knicks, the New York Knicks, have not been the winners of the conference finals in like 25 years or so. And so, the Knicks have a really hardcore following in New York, kind of like the Dodgers in LA, although, we're talking about baseball. And they have been fighting to make it to the conference finals against the Pacers. Now, why is this interesting? Why is this fun to watch? Not just because New Yorkers are totally out of control excited, but because they're excited about something to a degree that other cities only get excited about once you hit the championship finals. Like you have to have already made it to the end and be ready to get your, award in order for the city to be this alive. But New Yorkers are excited from day one and have been hitting the streets. And I love seeing a city come together. Just seeing people come alive, supporting this team and hoping that they get there, and new heroes emerging, as you watch them come into their own in these conference finals. So it's so much fun to watch. And right now we're hoping for a 7-game series. So matraca goes to everybody in the city of New York and around the world that is watching this game and being super excited. I love that.
Yay. Okay. The energy is contagious. So I'm feeling that.
Y la basura, what do we throw in la basura this week, Brenda?
Okay, this is sort of silly, and I sort of referenced it in earlier. I think the basura goes to Los Angeles having too many temptations for music and shows. Like, my budget cannot handle the amount of concerts and shows and opportunities that are here in Los Angeles. So this weekend has turned into LA Palooza. Because last night we went to Respect. Tonight I won tickets on the radio to go see Toki Monster. So that's tonight, right by your house, by the way. Nice. Tomorrow I got tickets to Soul Clap, which is sort of like a disco thing. And then on Sunday night, I scored free tickets to La Leaf. Shout out to my friends at Unidos US. And I'm going to have to go because one of my favorite bands, Quita Penas, is going to be playing for the closing night. So my basura again goes to just too many freaking awesome opportunities for music here in LA. Basura to that. Too much. It's too much.
And if you haven't heard the episode, Brenda actually interviewed Quita Penas a few episodes ago. So check it out.
Yes,
check it out.
Love them.
My basura, it comes, I know that this is something we've been talking about for years, but we're really seeing it this year, is the corporations massively scaling back and withdrawing their support for Pride Month events. So as you all know, month of June is Pride. We're kicking it off with Reyna Tropical. And every year there were all these corporations swearing that they super aligned with the queer community, that they wanted to donate money, they wanted to be a part of Pride, all these Pride events. And it had started to feel a little bit disingenuous for a few years, and there was a lot of commentary around this. But now, with a lot of the political pressure that Trump has put out against DEI initiatives, a lot of these companies actually pulled out. And some of the major Pride events in major cities have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I want to just name a couple of some of these corporations. There's a long list, and I just want to name a few just so we know who they are. So obviously Target, Anheuser-Busch, MasterCard, Citi, Pepsi, and Nissan are among some of the top folks who used to contribute and now don't. And the reason why this is a big basura for me is not because we need their money. It's because it's just, it goes to show that if you really had a corporate culture of supporting community, right, supporting initiatives, then I don't think that this pressure would have been so evident. It seems a little too easy to just pull out of something that you've been supporting for a decade. So for me, basura to just the lack of genuine support for the communities that are really big consumers of your product. So basura.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows you how flimsy that support was, right? It's so flimsy. And shout out to one of the people at the event that I went to with the Free Press, who said that it's important that we remind people when they say they're against DEI, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, you're against equity, inclusion, diversity, you're against these things. It's just ridiculous. So y'all, absolutely basura to all that flimsy support, because it obviously shows you that it didn't stand on something strong because you were so quick to step away. I continue to boycott Target, and it is hard because Target is where I love to buy my razors, my, lots of things that I used to go to Target regularly for, and I've held firm. So hopefully all of you are also not going to Target. I do drive by and I notice that there are fewer cars in the parking lot. There should be no cars in the parking lot. So all of us also, let's hold the line and be mindful of where we invest our dollars. And we can't boycott everything. It's very difficult to boycott everything, but whenever we can, let's seek out, like, Pride is a great example. How can we support queer artists, go to queer-led shows? How can we buy products from queer creators? Like, that's what we need to be doing this and every month, is just being mindful with how we spend our money. So echo to that basura.
¿Y qué tal the inspiración for this week, Brenda? What's making you feel inspired?
Yeah, today, and I will show a link in the show notes so y'all can see this video, but the person that inspired me this week is Patricia Topete Vasquez. She is a story that I identify with a lot, and I think a lot of people might identify with her story. So she immigrated to the U.S. at 12 to escape abuse. She, by herself, by the way, she became the valedictorian of her high school. She worked in the fields to put herself through college. She served on several boards. In fact, this is how I first met her, is that when she was on the board of Unidos US, where I used to work. She's purchased a home. She's a 3-time California governor appointee. She is leaving a prestigious role that she has, very similar to a job that I once held in corporate America. And she's been in the country for 21 years. And like many people with DACA, there's no path for citizenship. So she's done everything. She's done everything you could possibly do in this country, but there's nothing more that she can do. So she's decided to leave California, leave the U.S., leave the place that she's called home for the last 20 years. And she's moving to Spain, and she's going to get a master's degree. Her story was featured on ABC. You'll see the link in the bio so you could see this, or in the notes for this episode. You can learn more about her story. But I just think it's I'm inspired by her because she's taking ownership of her story. She says, you know what? I did everything you all wanted me to do, and nada. This is not the end of my power to take my story. I'm going to just keep thriving in a different country. So adios, your loss. So I'm inspired by that, by the courage that it takes to do that. And at the same time, I just think it's such a loss for the country that we're letting folks like this leave, that we're not creating a path to citizenship. It's a failure on all of us for letting that happen. And I'm, again, just inspired by Patricia's story.
Oh, I love that. And I know you and I have shared back and forth some other stories of people going to Germany and other places and trying to build lives there. And that's my first thought when I see stories like that, is just the incredible knowledge loss and capability loss that comes with that.
Yeah.
Okay. inspiración for me, I'm staying on the same topic. So taking it back to Pride Month, taking it back to these events, when I realized that some of the biggest Pride events that were happening in Manhattan, happening in Los Angeles, had lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, your first instinct is to go, ooh, well, what's going to happen? But then you start looking into it and you realize that a lot of these organizers are unafraid, right? They have figured out that this kind of has always been a grassroots initiative, and through volunteering and tapping into all of these different resources, including the podcast community for media coverage and for advertising, and tapping into some of these smaller businesses and artists and muralists, and really using the community's resources with allies to create a system that isn't going to miss some of this corporate sponsorship. And I just think that it's just so resilient and so creative and alive. And, the queer space is not the only space that's doing this. I also climate change advocates and people who have been dealing with a lot of resistance have also gone this creative route. And I'm so inspired by these organizers. It is not easy to be resilient in moments of resistance from support. Corporations resisting DEI initiatives. It's not an easy thing to do. And so I'm very excited to see that the community kind of goes on.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So that's such a wonderful note to end this first episode of Pride. We've got more conversations down the line coming down that are going to center queer joy, but all the time, Tamarindo is a place where queer joy is centered. So, y'all, if you like this episode, share it with a friend. And I want to just give a little plug too. Of course, we talked a lot about Reyna Tropical, but very recently there's been a lot of remixes of Reyna Tropical, including one with Sofia Cortesi, who I really, really like. Check that out. And there's also a remix with Lido Pimienta. So I love to see queer intersections and remixes. So more stuff for y'all to listen to as you dive into Reyna Tropical.
Awesome. Bueno, saludos a la familia.
Yeah, pon tu suéter. Bye.
Bye.
Tamarindo Podcast is Brenda Gonzalez and Delcy Sandoval. We are also the show's executive producers. Jeff Ricars wrote our theme song. Sonoro Media's Karina Riverol provides production support, and Cliva Torres edits our episodes for YouTube. The best way to support our work is to rate and review Tamarindo or share an episode with a friend. Get in touch with us at tamarindopodcast.com.
Hola, it's Rachel from Wait Que, your Spanglish podcast de confianza. When we started this podcast, I had no idea how much work went into it. Recording, editing, designing logos, managing socials. Each day brought a new challenge. Starting something from scratch is exciting, pero it can also be very overwhelming. That's why I wish I had something like Shopify back then. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and it's also perfect for anyone getting started. Build your online store with Shopify's professional templates, and let their AI tools help write descriptions, polish photos, and generate headlines. Shopify's got your back with inventory, shipping, returns, and all the not-so-glamorous parts of running a business. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your site. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/sonoro. Go to shopify.com/sonoro for more information.